Okay, good morning everybody. It's 11 o'clock. I've noticed that not everyone has signed in yet, so I might just give people another minute or two before they manage to download the software and sign in and so on. So just bear with us for another minute or so. We won't be far away from starting. Okay, I can see some more of you have signed in now, so we'll get started and the latecomers can pick it up as we go along. So welcome to the Global Reviews webinar on travel insurance. Just to give you a little overview, firstly on Global Reviews and then also on the product. Firstly, my name is Jeremy Weinstein. I'm a client advisor here at Global Reviews, and as you can see there's a lovely little picture of me. We don't usually use that. Usually I'm there in person presenting the information, but obviously when we are teleconferencing it's a little bit more difficult. So just a little bit about what we're going to get through today. Just something about Global Reviews, the company, who we are, for those of you who have not had an interaction with us before. Then I'm going to go through the digital marketing effectiveness research specifically in relation to travel insurance. And okay.
What we have at the moment is show my screen.
Yeah, I've got that.
No, please show my screen there, the play button. The play button.
Start broadcast, right.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Sorry about that. I did start a few minutes ago, but did not realise that we were not broadcasting yet. So let me just wind it back a few paces. If you can just bear with me. I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to do that. I've lost control of my... One second. Sorry, there we go again. Sorry about that. Let me start again. I do apologise. We ran into some technical difficulties. Welcome to the Global Reviews Travel Insurance webinar. Sorry, I'll just have to pick up where I left off. So. A little bit about what we're going to get through today. My name is Jeremy Weinstein, a client advisor from Global Reviews. And as you can see, there's a cute little picture of me there. First, what we're going to get through in the half an hour today is a little bit about Global Reviews, who we are. Then I'll go through the digital marketing effectiveness research that we did for the travel insurance industry at the end of last year in Q4 2012. And we'll go through just some of the statistics and a little bit about the flavour and the nature of the product to give you an idea about what's involved, give you some insights too about how people behave in terms of searching for and discovering travel insurance products, and then there'll be time at the end for some questions. So just a little bit about Global Reviews. We were founded in 2000, so that's kind of old already for a web company, and we've been involved in the web since then. We basically have products that give our customers competitor intelligence, customer experience measurements and behavioural evaluations across a range of different products. We operate also across multiple touch points or channels. We have web. We can also assess mobile instances of websites and other such things. We also have branch and retail touch points, so we can assess in terms of benchmarking the way that you deal with customers in that face-to-face way, and also contact centre products. And we operate across Australia, New Zealand, and in some European markets currently. And we've been around long enough to have already developed 25 plus industry benchmarks. So we really exist across a range of industries and a range of products in a range of different ways for some time now. So when it comes to measuring the customer experience, the way that we do it here at Global Reviews is really by tracking the customer journey, essentially. And it looks something like this. So the customer will go through a discovery phase where they try to become aware of your brand. Let's say they didn't know that they wanted or that they needed travel insurance, and suddenly they thought, well, you know, I'm going away, I'm going on a holiday overseas, I'm taking the family, I might need some insurance. So they start the discovery phase, and then they find a few brands, and they become aware of certain products that exist within travel insurance, so then they start considering them. And then through the act phase, so then purchasing and becoming a client or a customer of a particular travel insurance provider, to then receiving the products and becoming, a customer, a frequent customer, and then also to the relate phase. And what we're looking at today is really that first instance, which we've got a dotted circle around, which is the marketing of effectiveness. Really, how easily can customers find you online, and how strong is your attraction? And then through the consider, how effectively do you engage customers, and help them match products or services to their needs. So just as I've said there, that's that first two phases of that customer journey that we'll be looking at here specifically, but we do have other products that relate to travel insurance, namely the sales effectiveness products as well, and support effectiveness. So when looking at the digital marketing effectiveness product, what we do is we run people through a needs-based task that starts with a blank screen. We call it the blank screen methodology because essentially we ask the participants of this research one simple question or one simple task, and that is to do as much research as you need to identify a provider to provide you with a product. And in this case, the product is travel insurance, but we obviously do it across a range of industries where we have a number of different products. And essentially too, in something like banking, for example, where banking have different products, whether it be mortgages or credit cards and so on, so then we can actually split the marketing effectiveness to look at very specific products, not just, broadly banking, for example. And what do we capture? We capture a range of pre-task brand recall and initial preferences. So before we get them to do the task, we ask them, who can you think of when it comes to travel insurance, without prompting them in any way, and then ask them, okay, if you had to choose right now, who would you choose? And then we give them the task, and we see where they go and what they do. Do they use search engines? Do they use comparison sites? Do they go straight and directly to brand sites? How do they go about the task of discovery when it comes to travel insurance? And then the last thing we ask them is some post-task brand preferences. So then we ask them at the end, okay, select, now that you've done your research, we can see where you've gone, who would you put on a shortlist? Which travel insurance providers would you shortlist when considering? And then who would be the final preference? And then after we've asked them all those questions and we do some questions around why they've chosen, why they've made those decisions, we also then ask them about, from a given list, which companies they're aware of that provide travel insurance. So the very, very last thing is we give them a list so they can see a range of companies that provide travel insurance, and we ask which of these were they aware of, and that's a sort of final awareness. And so some of those things I've mentioned here, understanding the impact of broader offline marketing, standardized methods to establish baseline metrics. So what the advantage of the product too is that by doing it quarter on quarter or in shorter time periods if need be, then by standardizing the questions and by standardizing the process, we can get an accurate relationship between periods. So we can see how you're tracking in terms of your marketing, and if you've got a particular marketing push, we can see that often reflects in the research that we do around marketing effectiveness in terms of people being able to recall your brand more quickly or more commonly, and so on and so forth. Essentially, though, as I said earlier, the path that we take is we ask people for brand recall. This is an unprompted brand recall. Who can you think of without us inviting you to see or to look at any brands? Then we ask you again, initial preference. We see who you visited, then we ask you about shortlisted, final preference, and at the very, very end, we give you a list of travel insurance providers and we see if you're aware of those. Not you, if we see the participants of the study are aware of those. So we ran this in Q4 last year, Q4 2012, and here are the results. Now the results have been doctored a little bit. Obviously we don't want to give away the farm. We just want to give you a flavour and a taste of what this product is and what it can actually do. So again, initial preference. Do you have a, that's not right, sorry. First is unprompted recall, which then flows into initial preference. So unprompted recall, again, what we noticed was that 69% of participants had a travel insurance provider in mind when asked to recall one, which is actually quite low when you look at it. When you think about banks or when you think about other products that have maybe higher profile or in the news commonly, we see often 98% of people or very, very high numbers of people that can recall at least one provider. When it comes to travel insurance, we see 70% that can, which leaves 31% that can't. And that's a real opportunity for travel insurance providers because there are a lot of people who would start without any brand in mind even, without even being able to recall a brand. And what we saw in terms of those brands that could be recalled, the top brand was Amy when it comes to travel insurance, and then Medibank and Allianz, and then we've got a list of another 11 or so companies, just to give you an idea of where, of how the drop-off in terms of percentages go. So Amy, Allianz, and Medibank are pretty much there or thereabouts, 19-20%. Then there's a bit of a gap to the next group, and then company 8 sort of drops off again, and so on. But again, like I said, I think that this really indicates that there's an opportunity out there for travel insurance providers to capture a corner of the market that is unaware completely about travel insurance. And then we ask them, okay, so if they're the ones that you can recall, which ones would you prefer right there and then without doing any research? Now, pretty much split 50-50 is people that would make a selection and people that would still want to do essentially more research and people who are uncertain. The heartening thing is that only 1% wouldn't choose any of those in that top list, any of the top providers. So that's encouraging. Often we find backlashes again in other industries where people don't like any of the ones that they can recall. Again, also that provides an opportunity in terms of being able to uncover some of those smaller brands. What we noticed though was that Medibank, Allianz and Amy really, Medibank not so much, but Amy, who had 20% unprompted brand recall, ended up with only 3% of the initial preference, which is interesting. And also what we can see is that companies here branded -15, or even this company 10 kind of climbed five spots, and company 15 now -15 appears on the list. The reason that they might have a section of the initial preference is because of brand loyalty and trust. So people might not know of them, but those who have used them are likely to use them again. That's sort of what that seems to indicate. And then when we actually ask people, we see that these are the top 2 responses of why people had made that initial preference. And so when we actually quiz people, the voice of the customer does actually reflect the habits and the trends that we see from that previous slide. And again, it's good once, so again, it's open, and once you capture people, there's likely to be some brand loyalty, which again is sort of encouraging. And obviously reputation is very big, not only for travel insurance, but across a lot of industries. And then, some of these other reasons that are hidden give you greater insight into why people may choose your brand initially. And again, if people are in a hurry, as is often the case with travel, and they suddenly thought, I need travel insurance, and they don't have a lot of time for the discovery phase, so some of these things reputation and having used them before will play in their favour. So what happens when it comes to actually visitation? So where do people go and what are people's habits when it comes to actually the visiting phase? So after the unprompted recall and the initial preference, then we task people with the activity of seeing what travel insurance provider would be suitable for them. And unsurprisingly, what we see is 97% of people use a search engine at some point in the discovery phase. We know the popularity of search engines for almost everything these days. So again, it's unsurprising that 97% of people used a search engine sometime throughout the discovery phase of finding out more about travel insurance. What's also very encouraging, and we don't see these sorts of high numbers in other industries, is related to going directly to the brand. So the travel insurance brand at 86% is quite high, and that's a really good sign in terms of being able to get people to your site and to capture people there, hopefully with a good web execution, and then also with good offers and those sorts of things. What we see is 34% of people went to a comparison website, 14 went to research websites, so things perhaps like Wikipedia, the government's travel advisory, those sorts of things fit into that category relating to research websites, and then directory websites, again, things like Census or yellowpages.com or even whitepages.com. So people who might have had a brand in mind or might have known of something, or might just go to the travel insurance section, I guess, of the Yellow Pages online. That was a very low instance, obviously, of people who were doing the search. What we also can track and do track, and in greater detail than I'm going to present here today, obviously, is the most common pathways. So it's well and good to find out what people used at some point throughout the journey, but it's often really interesting to find out where in that journey they used it. So at 47%, people went from search straight to brands. Again, really encouraging to know that provided you appear in a search engine, when common terms are put in, then if you're on that first page in the first 10 or even in the first 20, then people are going to go directly to the brand. Coming in at second or equal second was people then going from a brand to a comparator site. So interestingly enough, we saw people go to a brand, and that might be multiple brands, so they might not have just gone to one brand, but they might have gone to a few brands, and then they've gone to a comparison site to see maybe if they can get a better deal, to see what other brands they might have that might not have come up in their search. So people use comparison sites not only to compare, but also as a research and a discovery tool, because again, they're presented with a range of options that they might not have been able to see elsewhere, and they get exposed to other brands. And we saw just the reverse, really. So in the top three, we saw people go straight from the web search to a comparison site, and then from a comparison site to a brand. So they might have, again, been exposed to a brand that might not have appeared even in the search, but they might have seen in the comparison site, and they might want more information about that, and so they've gone directly to the brand. The top 10 visited sites, when we're talking specifically about the brands, interestingly enough, this company, I've called it -15 star because it does appear more frequently, so I wanted to separate it out from the other ones that didn't appear in the initial brand recall, or the top 15 brand recall that I showed you earlier, but also that got the most visitations. Allianz also pretty high at 27%. Again, then there's a really big gap between another company that didn't appear at all in people's recall. So again, these brands are being exposed to them throughout the journey. And again, that really points to something, as I've got here, that is probably likely due to search, being that 97% of people went to search. And even though only 36, I think it was, % of people went to comparator sites, still, again, like I've said, that's another way that people get exposed to brands. And again, really interesting that this company -15 star got 31% visitation despite having a 1% recall, unprompted recall. And again, a few other things. Amy also, again, sort of down the list really, about Allianz, Medibank and Amy, which were the top 3 recall. You can see how they're placed. Another company that came in third was also not even in the initial recall at minus 15. So again, really interesting to see that brands can get exposed to customers throughout the journey, even if they're not top of mind. So then once people have had a chance to visit the website, see the instances of their websites, see the execution, see the offers that might entice people to consider your brand further, we ask people to then create a shortlist of the brands. Now this is a really important part, we think, of this particular exercise, because clearly if you're not on that shortlist, it's unlikely that you'll become preferred. So you know, it's a really key stepping stone. I guess all of them are, but this is a really key stepping stone to becoming that final selected brand. So again, if we have a look, the question that we asked is, please indicate which of those travel insurance providers you research you put on a shortlist for deeper consideration. Again, we see that even it's held its position, company minus 15 star at 31%, so that it really indicates probably a really good execution on the website, good offers, looks trustworthy, all of those things that we associate with people's considerations. It's maintained its position. So not only did people visit the site, sometimes you visit the site and you look at it and you think, that's not much of a site, there's not much there for me, I'm not really interested in the brand, and you kind of don't put it on your shortlist. So visitation doesn't always equate to high shortlisting, but in this particular instance we can see that it does. And Allianz has picked up a few points along the way too, and some of the other companies have slipped back. Medibank again, Amy have climbed a few positions again, probably because they are a well-recognised brand, and that plays in people's minds when it comes to actually considering for further investigation which companies to do to consider. And again, we see some of these companies that were low down that do end up on the shortlist. So again, various kinds of marketing, I guess, create various responses, and a lot of what we call broadcast advertising on radio or television obviously creates a high brand awareness, but doesn't necessarily guarantee that people will put you on the shortlist or ultimately choose you. Some of those other things, like we say, certainly in the digital channel, are discovered in other ways. So this is a really complicated and complex chart, but what it's really trying to show is the reasons. So then we ask people after they've created their shortlist what the reasons were for putting those companies on the shortlist, and then we don't limit people to the number of companies that can put on a shortlist, so it becomes very difficult to track the reasons why, as you can see in this chart. So these are just the top 10, mind you, and here's looks like 15 odd reasons. You can go through and really look and dissect it, but what we've done here is provided you with a little bit more digestible graph, actually, of where some of these companies sit. And without going into a lot of detail, this also isn't a very easy chart to understand, so I'll just explain some of the points to you. That x-axis, that horizontal axis, is really at one extreme where the Amy end is high reputation, familiarity, and a visually appealing website rolled in together, versus at the right-hand end, rates and good deals and offers. So you can see Amy, as is articulated in this breakout box, has good reputation and familiarity, whereas company minus 15 here at the right-hand end is favoured because of price and deals consideration. And then obviously company 15, company 4 is somewhere in between high familiarity and good deals, and so on. When we look at the Y at the vertical axis, we can see that it's at the lower end, the Medibank, Allianz and company minus 15 end. Down low is website was easy to use and products were easy to choose from. And we can see that Medibank and Allianz and this company minus 15 star that I've been referring to throughout have a good, easy-to-use website, and products were easy to choose from, whereas Company 9 also had a good reputation. Now, you can see reputation is a really key factor in people's decision-making, not only in travel insurance, but we find across the board and across industries. Obviously, people are spending money with you, and often a lot of money. They want to know that the company is reputable and it's going to be around long enough to honour their contract or their commitment and so on. And so reputation appears in some form in both the horizontal and the vertical axis. But it just gives you an indication, and again helps you see the analysis that we do on the data in terms of the reason people are making the choices that they make in terms of the companies that they're shortlisting and why they're shortlisting those companies. And obviously we ask similar questions when it comes to the final preference, which I'll get to. We don't show you the questions. Again, we don't have time in this webinar to show you everything, unfortunately. But again, the idea is to just give you a flavour and a taste of it, and just to see what we do in the analysis that we run. So the last thing we do is, so you've been through the process, you've shortlisted companies that you're interested in doing some more research for, and then we say, what would you prefer? Okay, you've come to the end of your journey, what would you prefer? But before I get to the final scores, I just remind you of people's initial preferences. And so Company 4 and 5 had 12% of the initial preference. Medibank and Company 7 had 8%, and a conglomerate of 4 companies had 5%. What's interesting to note is that despite Amy's 20%, I think it was, initial recall, they had no initial preference. So initial unprompted recall, Amy had 20%, and they don't appear at all in the initial preferences. And Company 8 is the only company also out of the top 10. So how did it all change? What happened in terms of the final preferences? And so we see Company 5, if I just tack back, Company 5 was one of the 2 top initially preferred. They maintained their position. They had 14% of the final preference. Allianz climbed a few spots in terms of being second with 9%. Company minus 15 star, that did not appear at all in the initial preference, primarily because no one could recall them, actually ended up third with 7%. So that's a really, really significant result, and really points to their marketing, their digital marketing effectiveness, essentially, which is the product that we're talking about here today. And also, in the end, Medibank sort of held its position in so I suppose, equal third, and Company 15 and Company 4 also joined them. So Company 4 dropped down a few spots from its initial preference. Sorry, I'm flicking backwards and forwards, but just to give you an idea of the relationship between those that had to make a decision very quickly and then those who had the time to consider and where the companies fall. Finally, Amy does reclaim some ground at the end and has a 5% share of the final preference. Here's, again, so I sort of mentioned that, didn't appear on the unprompted recalls, which meant it had less than 6% unprompted recall, and this Company minus 15 actually had no initial preference whatsoever. So again, just the process allows people to discover brands that they might not know of or might not have thought of before. I won't go into detail here, but here's a full list of those companies. So that was just obviously the highlights. And again, too, we do ask people why they made the choices that they made. I haven't put that slide up here today, but all of that information is available. Just to end on a good note, a positive note, few people in general, and again, this is part of the behavioural insights that we capture, very few people actually want to apply for travel insurance through the comparison sites. So they might go to comparison sites to get an idea of what's going on, but really 73% would rather deal directly with the provider. So that's really good news for travel insurance providers. 18% would actually like to phone the provider, which is unsurprising. I mean, there are still people who want to use the telephone. 67% would apply directly through the website, and the reasons for that, thought it would be quick, they want to deal directly with the provider, thought it would be get the best deal, and so on. 8% would apply online through comparison websites, and the reasons there are thought it would be the quickest and thought it would be the best deal. And also 14% didn't actually trust comparison websites at all. So again, good news on the whole for those of you who are not comparison sites, but for those of you who are actually travel insurance providers. So it's 11:30, which is the, oh, that's my alarm. That's good. I'm hitting the mark good. So this is just to give you a quick snapshot of the actual product in full. You get brand recognition, recall and awareness. Again, I didn't go through the awareness, didn't have time. Initial preference, shortlist, and final preference. We give you the acquisitions funnels, as you can see over here. And all of this is in an easily accessible web portal. So we give you access to that portal with a number of logins for you and your colleagues. And then we also obviously have customer journeys, and all of this is available in the portal, which is quite dynamic in that you can actually create filters. You can search by demographics. You might see alongside there some of the demographics, male, female, and some of the age groups that we've got there. And also you can sort by certain things. So let's say you only wanted to see people who preferred you initially and the decisions that they made after that. So you can sort really quite specifically. What the product also includes is a 90-minute workshop with deep dives into particular areas of interest generally provided by me. So in terms of the next steps, okay, so if you're interested in either further information or to have the product and to get in touch with Steve Vanita, our commercial director, and his details are provided there. I think it's also pertinent to just let you know that next week, next Tuesday, the 4th of June, a week from today, Global Reviews are having its inaugural Leaders Summit. It'll be in Melbourne at the Royce Hotel, and if you'd like some more information about that, please get in touch with Stephen. Attendees of this particular webinar will have complimentary admission, so it's well worth dropping him a line and just getting a little bit more information either about the digital marketing effectiveness product or the Global Reviews Digital Leaders Summit. I've taken a few extra minutes of your time. I do apologise. We did have a false start, and just wanted to know if there's any questions. There is the opportunity for people to type in questions as they go, and I'll be happy to answer them. Just check if there have been any posted. Someone's asking if there's any information about the final awareness and how the company's altered in terms of brand awareness when they were given a complete list. And interestingly, the top three were the same, Allianz, Medibank and Amy, but in a slightly different order. And initially, unprompted, it was Amy on the top. Amy slipped back to second with Allianz coming in first. So again, we have access to a lot of other data, obviously, than the data we've provided here today. Again, thank you very much for your attendance, and if there's any further questions, please feel free to contact Stephen on those details. Thank you.